Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the archive. On each episode of this podcast, we sit down with either a founder, a builder, or a dreamer in the Arweave ecosystem and the perma web at large. And on today's episode, we have an exciting guest who is Greg, and he has been a long-time member of the Arweave community. He's also the founder and CEO of Longview Labs, and he is laser focused on community and improving the experience in the community. I've personally worked with him on some project around the Arweave ecosystem focused on the community. And with no further ado, let's jump straight into the episode. On today's episode, we're sitting down with an exciting guest, Greg, who has been a very long term member of the Arweave community in general. He's also the founder of Longview Labs. Greg, happy to have you today.
Thank you, Murdy. It's great to be here.
Nice. So yeah, just getting in. Maybe I'm sure most people in the community have met you in some way, but for someone seeing this for the first time and they're seeing you for the first time, do you mind giving us a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Greg Albritton, and I am the founder and CEO of Longview Labs, which Murdy mentioned in the intro there. Longview Labs is just 100% dedicated to Arweave and the perm web. So at Longview, we actually build applications that utilize Arweave. We build out communities and the macro ecosystem wherever we can. One of our ecosystems and communities in which we facilitated is known as Arweave India, for example. And we also facilitate events and educational material. So things like Only Arweave is one of our accounts that we share the Arweave today, every day, and a bunch of highlights of individuals and humans in the ecosystem. So we combine all three of these components, if you will, to really rising tide lifts all boats of the Arweave ecosystem at a macro scale and also at a very human scale with real connections and opportunities across the board. I mean, I like to think of Longview Labs as a catalyst and connector as well as an expander.
Nice. And before moving forward, I just at a personal level, just want to say thank you for all the work you and the team do behind Only Arweave. I think it's one of those accounts that I'm always watching all the times to know everything happening in the ecosystem. Yeah, just wanted to say thank you from a personal level.
Thank you. Yeah. And Murdy, you and I have been able to collaborate a lot over the years with the advent of Arweave Africa and the East Africa tour, the East Africa tour that you hosted, and some of the very first presentations that had occurred or ever occurred up until that point on the continent that is Africa, and you led that, and it was great to collaborate with you and in West Africa, working with others to be at an actual event in Nigeria, and a lot of initiatives that you've also facilitated and we've been able to collaborate on as well, which has been great.
Yeah, thank you. So as I think from what I understand, Longview Labs is more involved in the community, with the community. And I'm just wondering, on a personal level, how did you get in the Arweave ecosystem? How did you before Longview Labs and everything? What was that point where you're like, hey, I want to focus on Arweave? How was the story?
Yeah, so I'll start back to 2013, which is quite a long time ago now. And the reason why I'm going to 2013 is that it shares a bit more of the story of my involvement in decentralized infrastructure and technology. So during that time, in around 2012, 2013, I was researching Bitcoin quite a bit, and I was thinking about our economic system at large. And at the time, of course, Bitcoin was getting more and more popular and well known. And I was just kind of pondering, like, well, what can our civilization look like with different financial rails? And also thinking about the ability for an exchange of value without third parties, and thinking about potential privacy implications and opportunities as really the advent and the initial introduction of what is now known as blockchain through Bitcoin was really coming into fruition in my world, from my vantage point, from my research. And I've been involved in startups for decades at this point, which is kind of wild to say out loud. And so my roommate at the time was like, "Hey, look, there's this New York Times article about this incubator in Guadalajara in Mexico." I'm like, "Wow, that's cool. Be really fun to go participate. We'll learn about the incubator, and then there's also a hackathon, a weekend hackathon." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, I'll go check out this incubator, and then I'll participate in this hackathon in Spanish. I like to speak Spanish. I really enjoy Latin America." And so I went down there and I participated in the hackathon, and it was a great experience. My first kind of Spanish speaking hackathon, which was a lot of fun and a great challenge and a great crew. And while I was there, I'd been thinking about Bitcoin so much. I'm like, maybe there's a Bitcoin meetup going on as I'm here. And sure enough, there was a Bitcoin meetup. I don't know if it was the first one. It seemed like one of the first ones. I'm not sure. And I decided to go. And I hadn't been to a Bitcoin meetup. This was in 2013, I think. And I went to this Bitcoin meetup. And I think it was in an actual literal garage. And there are about 10 of us in that garage. In that moment, I didn't really know what was going on for me. Now I'm thinking back to it and I have some reflections on it. And I'll get to coming into Arweave. However, I think that this story is related because this is my journey into decentralized networks and infrastructure and blockchain. Anyways, so there are about 10 of us in this like garage. Like I think it was like a literal garage. And it was very underground feeling, not exclusionary at all. It was just like there's something really important happening here. And the actual Bitcoin coin was being passed around, right? We don't see that now. Like that's just not something that we see. And it's being passed around, and there's this whole introduction, in Spanish, which was a fun challenge for me, about Bitcoin. And there was this energy in the room and topics that I recall thinking about, like our civilization, the financial rails of our civilization. At that time, there's like a lot of microtransactions and obviously emphasis on the ledger and the immutable ledger and the characteristics of that. And, also store of value potential and, price and all of this and that. The real core of the discussion was, first of all, education. How does this work? And like, what may it do for our entire society and civilization at large? And it was very forward thinking, very kind of imaginative, although based in reality. And it had this aura and this gravitas of like, there's something going on here. And it wasn't just projection and just like, hey, go and do this and buy Bitcoin. No, it was not that. It was like, this is what this is. Some of us think it's really, really interesting and exciting and important. DYOR, and let's talk about it here. And there's such an underground current of really being a part of something that can positively, ideally, right, impact the world. Now I'm going to fast forward to 2017. And in 2017, I discovered Ethereum. And Ethereum was an epiphany for me. So I'd been involved in Bitcoin and whatnot since around 2013-ish, something like that. And then I discovered Ethereum. I was like, okay, so using blockchain for a financial kind of exchange system. And at that time, the dates are a little bit fuzzy. However, I was thinking about how these structures, these blockchains, in particular at the time, Ethereum, can orchestrate machines. So one of the things where I had this aha moment, I was like, wow, this is really interesting, is I was thinking about how a vending machine works, like an actual physical vending machine. And I'm like, it's like a robot and it has this program and it's like a smart contract. You push a button and there's smart contract logic that says, okay, well, that item's going to be this much. And so you better pay, right? Pay your gas fee or whatever. And then you get the thing. And I'm like, what if this Ethereum thing, like, what if it actually connected the entire chain of events, meaning all the product development in the back end, all the logistics, all the warehouse management, all of those things, they're all contract based, all of them. And the smart contract component has, in my mind, right, like this if then statement that can chain financial instruments. That's how I was thinking about it. And when I had that vision, I got into Ethereum and I explored it, and I actually worked on a few projects around that time. And that was a really big epiphany for me. And I was researching and thinking a lot about decentralized autonomous organizations. Their form factor in actuality was very different than what I thought. I did not think it was going to be NFT communities at all in any way. And where the biggest part of these decentralized autonomous organizations were actually humans and not machines or code. I did not think that at all. And I thought it was going to be like decentralized autonomous organizations. Like you have like machines communicating with machines, right? So anyways, I was involved in some DAOs over the years, and or pseudo DAOs as I call them, because the autonomous component really needs to be removed and needs to be dues, DO, like who is doing the work. Actually, there's no autonomous component to many of the quote unquote DAOs that I experienced, that I was a part of. And this whole experience with Ethereum was important for me. And then I've worked in startups. I worked in a different startup. I had a growth role and whatnot, and was able to build that app business further and all of that. And then some of my family members, a few years later, like in 2020, right, so like COVID era, they started talking about crypto, blockchain, and I'm like, okay, like I wonder, what's going on, and so I started getting into the topic. Now I know I'm going on for a while here. It's just there's context. So I'm getting to why Arweave, and I think it's important to share these things because I'm going to wrap it together. So please interject, Murdy, if there's something you want to say. So
Sure.
so when I began looking at blockchain again in 2020, I started thinking about the pillars of our decentralized civilization. And I'm like, okay, what are the really important things here? All right, so we probably want a place to store value, right? So store value, aka Bitcoin. And we probably want some orchestration of financial instruments, right? At the time, Ethereum. Okay, what about the biggest thing? And what is the biggest thing? Data. What about data? If we don't have data, we don't have the internet, right? If we don't have data, we don't have a store of value. If we don't have data, we don't have financial instruments of the world, right? If we don't have data, what are we doing? And so this really got to the fundamental of, wow, I need to research data storage protocols. And so this is where I got into data storage as the key pillar, the key component to this digital civilization that I have been thinking about for a decade or more now. And so that was my thesis. And I began to explore the protocols, and I began to get very confused very, very quickly. And I didn't really understand things out there. It wasn't making sense to me. I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's me. I don't know. I just don't get it. And then I found Arweave, and I'm like, this is so different. Not working off of mimicry of legacy or the status quo of what storage looks like. Removing, completely destructing the notion of subscription and rental and serfdom, basically, and leaning into, to the greatest extent possible, even with proof of work, into blockchain architecture and a blockchain experience that supersedes the here and now and spans centuries as a vision. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is totally amazing. I'll pause there, and I have more to share about actually how I got involved. However, I'll stop there.
Yeah, I've just been listening to this, and again, I like the fact that you just like went way back to like where it all started, not just Arweave, but like just it just shows how you started with like Web3 in general, and then to reach to Arweave. And I think that has been sort of, from at least many people that I've talked to and I've heard their stories, it's like they've really been into Web3 for relatively long time, and they started with, like for your case, Bitcoin or Ethereum, but then at some point they they either search deeper to know, like, is there anything other than, like, I feel like other people or other ecosystem have always been talking about like token, but then when people get to Arweave in some way, they they find the value and the, like, that core component of it, which is permanent storage. And again, as you mentioned, with a model where it's not subscription, it's just pay once and store permanently. And that is just very, like, I like the fact that most people just see that from the go, from the get go, where it's like, hey, wait a minute, this is not all about tokens or just finances, but like there is something here where the whole internet is built on storage in a sense, and this is just tackling permanent storage. And yeah, from what I've heard, that's like how you literally got to the point of discovering Arweave.
Yeah, I think it for me. It's getting further and further into the fundamentals of what, and again, I use this phrase, like a digital civilization really needs. And when one recognizes that data powers the world, probably a good place to go.
Yeah, and I think just adding on that, I don't know from whose talk I heard this, but like someone was basically trying to explain Arweave, and they're like, when you come to Arweave, like the data is already there. It's like it's just a data lake, and like this data is not sort of siloed under one organization or anything, and it's there, and the whole purpose is the data is going to outlive us at some point and like go generations down the line, which I think if you really sit and think about it, not I always try to think about it in a sense that if Arif was there like 200 years ago, how much information would we have access to, and like how would that impact our generations? And I sort of feel a little bit jealous, like the people who will come across Arif like years or centuries down the line, how much they will know about the past in order to like understand their present at that time and like predict their future, which is so profound in itself.
Yeah. So this is the next big thing with the topic, right? So, okay, well, what is a fundamental, at least from my vantage point, uh, component of this digital civilization that I speak to? It's data, right? And it's here. Like this whole digital civilization thing, like it is here, right? It can be called cyberspace. It can be called the internet. It can be called the web. It can be called apps that you use on your phone. Whatever it is here. and it's growing. And one of the things that I've recognized, what I recognized very early with Arweave in this exploration, was like, okay, data is key. No data, no internet. I don't know what else to say. And so going towards that, one of the things that just surprised me in the best of ways is it's not about just data. There are many things out there that can store data. We can rent data. We can subscribe to data, our own photos, all these things, right? The big thing is timeline of data, longevity of data. And this is where Arweave was a total in awe moment, where I'm like, this is such different thinking that it was difficult for me to comprehend, because so few things are discussed or spoken about in terms of centuries. I mean, the word century is almost taboo in that it's barely spoken about, because it's only generally about, here and now, a year down the road, 5 years, maybe 10 years. Century, and then plural, centuries, is a total anomaly and outlier. And Arweave goes straight into this. So let's stack purpose and mission. Let's stack fundamentals. Data, no internet, basically, right? No history. And then long-term time horizon. And like for me, when I found Arweave, I'm like, okay, so it's the fundamental thing that we need to orchestrate everything, which is data. And we also need to think beyond the here and now for the time span, the lifespan of data, for the benefits and the things which you just, spoke to about being able to benefit the future of humanity and machines. And it's just like this whole opening up of, to me, like some of the most profound, literally some of the most profound things that are happening in our entire society today, which is short-term thinking and loss of data, loss of ownership of data or not access to data at all. And like just this notion of just short-term, like filament life of someone can just change the filament or break the filament or whatever it is. And like history has changed. And these things just came together for me in this aha collection of moments where I just became obsessed with Arweave, watched every single video of Sam, from his presentations to the podcasts and, things of this sort. Right. And I appreciate you doing this, like where I just became so inspired and so enthralled and just, obsessed with what Arweave presents as an opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, I think I was actually going to ask a question after this. I'll put the question, but I think we've already talked about half of the answer of the question. And the question was going to be like, why are you bullish on Arweave in general, right? And the reason why I'm asking the question is I feel like people are bullish on Arweave for the right reasons why Arweave exists. In a sense that Arweave is storage, permanent storage network or permanent storage blockchain, and people come to Arweave because they're looking for mostly decentralized storage in the first component, but they find decentralized, distributed, and permanent storage. And yeah, I just wanted to know from your perspective, why are you bullish on Arweave? I know you've talked about this, but I just want to ask again the question openly and hear that from your own perspective and angle, from the time you stumbled across Arweave to now, probably 4 or 5 years down the line, you already know how the tech is, how things work. So why are you bullish on Arweave?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, just from a personal preference, I tend to not use those words, bullish or bearish, because oftentimes those things come in pairs, where there's bullish and bearishness. And that's not how I think about Arweave at all. Uh, at all, because I don't think that there are cycles of it. To me, it is fundamental technology for our society and civilization. And if I look at the big picture, I see data and time as incredibly valuable assets to everything that happens online and in physicality. And so it's beyond bullishness or this notion of bearishness or anything like that. It's unwavering. It's commitment. It's looking at the big picture and going beyond any cycle dynamics or anything like that. I mean, like, look, man, like, this is beyond that. How else can I say it? I mean, maybe that comes off as like, all right, dude, yeah, whatever. It's just like, that's actually how I think about it. It doesn't need to be in these conversations of, these cyclical patterns. If you actually, I'm just talking about my perspective, like, if you actually look at the tech and you look at the opportunity here, it supersedes all of that. Like, I just, it doesn't equate to me to have these signals as a part of how I think about the tech. I just don't buy that at all. And I know, you're not necessarily like pointing towards that. I'm just kind of getting on that word because I think it's kind of like, it doesn't, it seems like, for me, from my perspective, Arweave just supersedes that. And it's like, this is such profound, important tech that I don't really need those words, is how I think about it.
Yeah, and I think you've just pointed something very interesting and important there. Yeah, I think the wording was a bit confusing from my end, but then it just brought the fact that, again, as I said, I think most people in the community who are around Arweave, they I think we mostly attach bullish and bearish to like tokens going up and down. And most people who are here, who are building, who believe, or who are exploring the tech, they just almost never talk about prices and all that. They're like, hey, there is a reef here, it works, and I can use it. And yeah, that's just enough for me. Regardless of what happens with the market and all that, I believe that technology works, and that's enough for me, right? Like, if someone today they want to, let's say a normal person, they want to upload their, I don't know, a random video on Arweave, they can use any of the applications in the ecosystem. And whether the price is up or down, they can still do that. And that's just enough for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly want to go into all like tokenomics discussion and price fluctuations, everything like that. What I'm getting at is, if one looks at, like, to me, like, the biggest mission of the internet and of our orchestration of society, data is the thing that brings it all together. So if you think data is important, then Arweave is a place for you to be. And yeah, am I a fan if the value of the network goes up? Absolutely. Because I think the mission is so valuable, right? So more individuals orienting themselves, which I think is really about gaining clarity on what's important, that's fantastic. And that can have positive implications for the economics of the network, which in turn helps the network do more of the work. And that's good. So, of course, I'm a fan of that and I'm an advocate of that. I just think that the framing it just supersedes these cyclical components, these cyclical dialogues, these cyclical descriptors, in that the mission is just so fundamental that there's bigger things to talk about. And I think that those that are thinking bigger really stick around. That's what I think.
Yeah, nice, interesting. So zooming out a little bit, so we know that the network is there, the tech is there, and it's working. But there needs to be people around any type of technology who use, who build on top, and all that. And I would assume you've been around so many communities, like the probably the Bitcoin community, Ethereum community, and now the Arweave community. What do you think about the Arweave community in general? Just
Yeah. So this has been a great, fortunate opportunity because the things in which I've discussed thus far also hold a through line to the participants in the ecosystem and community. There is a real high degree of intention, integrity, thoughtfulness, and commitment. And these are the things that I am very attracted to. And, we have a lot of decisions in our lives as to what we do. And I feel fortunate that I'm able to put this much energy of my life into this because of the others that are also involved that, from my lens, have a high degree of integrity, that have a high purpose and mission value associated with what they do every day, and that are thinking in very long-term time horizons. And so there's also the relationship component that builds over time, that can go through ebbs and flows and changes and everything like that. And that's a healthy aspect of the growth of a network committed to time. So there's also this like commitment factor that feels extraordinary to me, and a lot of profound thinkers and doers, and like that is motivating to me. I personally think there's a huge distillation. There's this huge aspect in the general, I'll say, crypto space. I distinguish crypto and blockchain a bit, um, of looking for purpose. Like, okay, been fun. Why do it? Right. And some of these things have gone, pretty big on X, um, out there. And I think just Arweave is so well positioned to just be like, yep, there's a place to have real purpose. Uh, and it's Arweave, and it's so mission driven. It can be your own mission. That's the thing too. It's not like the protocol is telling you. It's just like, yeah, here's a substrate. Put your mission in there. Have a purpose. Enable the future of data to persist, and create like the people's data platform, which is such a beautiful thing. And that's who's attracted to this community.
yeah, I think that I haven't really been involved in like many communities. I think for like most of my Web3 journey, it's been in the Arweave ecosystem. But before Arweave, I was involved in another community. I won't name that community. But then moving from that community to the Arweave or PermaWeb community in general, uh, you you can just feel something like different in terms of like how people are enthusiastic about like the technology and what they're building, and it's like the whole community is mostly moving towards the same direction, and like they share the same passion and all that, which is just, it's in my opinion, and this is personal level, it's just a good place to be in with with like-minded people, and as you said, like people with integrity and with the same sort of energy. So yeah, I've really enjoyed being around the community for these past couple of years.
Absolutely. I think it's so important to be able to collaborate and work with and so on with others that you respect, and also have interesting perspectives. That's very fulfilling. And I've found a lot of that in this ecosystem or community. And I think that there's a giant opportunity for more individuals to find that. And that to me is one of the most exciting components. It's a big world, and there's a lot of really great individuals. There's a lot of deep thinkers. There's a lot of great doers that are thinking beyond the here and now in this moment. And that to me is one of the things I'm most enthused about for Arweave. It's like, not even 8 years since mainnet launch, and this protocol is designed for centuries. And we've already had so many great individuals and millions, billions of transactions, almost 25 billion transactions, right? And so just think about the potential of more individuals finding this tech, arriving at that Arweave aha moment, because the duration is giant. It's a different time scale. It doesn't need just pop and flash like a sparkle in the air that then disappears with the wind. That's not what it is. It's more like an eternal flame, and more individuals add to it. It grows bigger. That's the beauty of it, and that's the real opportunity and a core motivation for me. Is the long time horizon. I think when there's individuals that may compare things out there, right? Okay, you compare things in the moment. Okay, compares things over the long term, and you get a very, very different landscape. Extremely different landscape.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if like this is by design in some way, but the way I look at the tech and the community, it's like Arweave is designed to be around for like centuries, and the people building on top are in some way thinking about it like the long term. Most of the people, whether it's building apps, whether it's building community, like most people are also thinking like, hey, this is not just a 1 year thing, a 6 month thing, but like 10, 20, 50, 80, 100 years down the line. How are we thinking about that in the long term? And it's been exciting talking to people and seeing that most of them also think long term rather than like short term.
Yeah.
um
This is one of the anomalies and one of the bold components of which Arweave, in my opinion, as a protocol, is extremely bold in a very, very good way of architecting something that is designed for centuries. Just saying that out loud again is almost taboo in current culture, especially in digital culture. And it to me is so refreshing. It's just awesome. I just so align with that. Sorry, what were you going to say?
yeah, I was just thinking about it right now. Since we are still talking about communities, and like there are many communities around from all over the world. I think the Arif community is really growing over time, and I'm just thinking, since you are, I think, at a personal level and with Longview Labs, have been involved in the communities for quite a number of years. What are the things that and this is no guideline, no roadmap, but maybe like sort of reflecting on it. What are the things that you've seen working with different communities that might be picked up by someone maybe listening to this? I don't know. Um, Later on, like the things you've seen with communities that have worked, and communities are different, but like in general. So if you can like pinpoint some of those things.
Yeah. So a few things. One of which, these are really basic or simple things, is just respect for others. Creating dynamics where relationships can be built, where it's not only about financial components. It's about purpose. It's about mission. When someone's very purpose oriented or mission oriented, they typically can have some bumps and bruises and so on, and continue on. And there's this resiliency, and so that really comes from treating individuals with respect, facilitating a dynamic where you're not a number, you're a human being with a name and a story. And this comes all the way back to the earlier discussions on this podcast. Like it's bigger than just a transaction. And the protocol for me informs a lot of the social dynamics of an ecosystem. And when you have a protocol that's just designed to be relentless, to be your literally best relationship of data you can possibly have. Like Arweave basically, in my opinion, is like, hey, it's Arweave. Like Arweave wants to have the best relationship with you, with your data possible. It's like a full-on like relationship protocol in that it wants to be the best relationship to you if it's your data, the most respectful keeper or provider of your data. And like, it's all about bringing that into the ecosystem. And so from my experience directly, as well as through observation, looking towards the protocol and implementing those things from in a social framework is really, really, really valuable, because you already have deep thinkers, very curious, very long-term thinking, very open individuals. And they probably want to have those things for the human relationship. So respect, you're not a number, you're a human being with a story. This is intended to be, right, a long-term connection and relationship with the technology. It's like a perspective that goes beyond just a relationship. And so, yeah, those are like the fundamentals, I think, that are super, super, super valuable. And sometimes they're overlooked in various places. And to me, it's just a thing to totally lean into. Rhetorically speaking, we all want to feel connected, right? We all want to be motivated, and we all want to be respected. And like, if you combine all those things, that's actually what the protocol does from a technological standpoint. That's what it does to data. Like that's what it tells you. It's like, hey, protocols are going to respect your data to the greatest extent possible. And I think that leading with that type of ideology for the human side is where it's at.
Yeah, interesting. And I actually love the not the analogy, but the connection with the how the protocol is designed and like changing that on like the social aspect. And yeah, it now it makes a lot of sense, and you can just see the connections there. Yeah, I love the analogy. Um, yeah, so zooming out again a little bit, or not zooming out actually, like talking going back to there is I was watching your talk from Arif Day, I think, yeah, either Arif Day or Arif Day Asia, I can't remember well, this year, and you're talking about being on camera, and I don't know if it was just me, but I don't know if I got the whole talk well. It feels like it was a little bit compressed, and there was like a profound message behind. Can you just like talk about the message that like you wanted to share behind that whole talk?
Sure. Yeah. So this was like 6 months ago. This was Arweave Day Berlin. Um, and the intention of that talk, just kind of like conjuring up images right now in my mind, is exactly what I'm talking to. Or like it's about building relationships and the human interface, right? The human exchange is incredibly important, and arguably more and more important. A sense of humanness, as we go toward, as generally there's more AI and things like that. And so, be on camera, to me, for those that maybe have an inkling, right? Like, man, maybe I'm going to do that. I don't know. I'm a little bit scared or whatever. Is really a message to be a catalyst to go and do it, and to put forth one's energy in a visual format that others can assimilate with, which is video. And this is where there's kind of like this emotional cortex. There's this emotional assimilation. I like that. Whereby someone can be introduced to a technology, a thought, a theme, in even an emotionally driven way by feeling connected to someone. And I think that we just need more of it. And part of it also is that I have had so many conversations just in private, right? Like if you and I were just hanging out together, just talking, that are so great that I'm like, man, be awesome if you can just share these thoughts with others and just be on camera to have, at least an inkling of what I've been able to experience in private conversation. And I've had those experiences so many times within this ecosystem because there is so much thoughtfulness. There are so many individuals that have amazing, incredible thoughts. And so the impetus for that talk and that emphasis is about all of the above, in which I just outlined. It's simply about connecting and developing more patterns and behaviors, adding the human component. Because data is human. It's a human thing. It's not something new. Digital format, sure. Yeah, new. Last whatever, how many decades. Yeah, relatively new. Yeah. Cave drawings, not new. The interest in keeping things around, not new. These are not new things. Arweave is not new in that way. Arweave presents a new opportunity for our entire digital lives and civilization to do the things that humans have been wanting to do, like since humanity has begun. So this is what is like so cool. It's actually not building a new habit for humanity, not habit for humanity. It's not building a new habit for humans. It's augmenting it through our digital landscape. And like, this is so cool to me. And this is where we need more individuals, I think, on camera sharing that feel that initiative, like, I want to say something, to go out there and share it, because there's an emotional component to data, right? There's an expressiveness, there's this beauty, there's this heritage, and there's something like it feels innate to the human quality and condition to want to store things for future generations. And I think that we need more individuals sharing that, whatever they're working on, whatever their path is. And so that's where that talk originated from Arweave Day Berlin.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was thinking in the same lens, but like I hadn't grasped the whole thing. And I think you're actually right. And even if we put our river as a protocol aside, I think in the digital era and wherever we're heading, where like there is a lot of AI generated this and that, I feel like that authenticity through video is going to like be more and more needed, because you can write, like you can tweet something, for example, on X, and it doesn't feel the same if you're watching like maybe like a video. And I think an example for this. um there is a time, probably a month ago, Tate shared a video on X about, like, he was talking about some mistake, quote unquote, he did, and I could just tell from the comment section that people were actually, like, they could feel personally connected to him after watching that video. And he also said, when I was on a call with him, that he was actually surprised to see people more of like connecting with him rather than like rejecting him or like telling him all the type of things we see on Twitter. And I think it just falls under that same be on camera thing, to like have those sort of personal connections with other people in this digital space.
Yeah. I mean, beyond the example in which you just shared, human connection can be very powerful to digest one's own thoughts. so we can mirror ourselves in some way, provide new perspective to ourselves through others. And a lot to me of Arweave is actually getting to that like Arweave aha moment where it's like, oh wow, this actually makes a lot of sense to me. Wait a second, so no data, no internet, basically like no history, very questionable future. Yeah, I feel like this is important. Oh, blockchains are bloated. They can't, the validators can't handle the data and it's causing issues. So what if Arweave stores that historical data for blockchains so it can do that? I mean, come on. Like, and when someone is, for example, we're talking this, on video, like when someone's on video, you get to actually experience more of those emotions and logic in combination, in tandem, right? Which is the human experience. And sometimes these conceptual leaps are huge. They're huge to get through, to get clarity on a topic. And individuals, humans, I think have a unique opportunity and responsibility in communicating things that they care about. It is to me in service of others when you find something that you think is really, really important, and and where you can get on camera and share about it, right?
Yeah, and I think at some point in the talk you had a good video to illustrate that. Like it was a very simple, I think, experiment from someone, and you could just tell how excited they were about like what they were doing, that experiment. And those are things you can't feel through like text. You just have to see it and see those emotions.
Totally, and this is something where it's like, that was Hope, by the way. Shout out Hope. Hope's building hardware devices and entire infrastructure for hardware devices to really effectively communicate through AO, and of course storing that on Arweave. In that video, he was building something. And he basically found out that it totally works, and he was basically researching and working on it. And it's like, boom, it works. And he shared that as an internal clip to me, and I'm like, hey man, can I share this because this is super real and really, really amazing. He's like, yeah. And this is where like I encourage individuals to be out there and like share what you're working on where you can as you're working on it, and boom, something happens, something works, something clicks, something exciting or whatever. Even if it's more of like a formal thing, like, oh man, I just did that wrong. It all helps to assimilate with the tech. And the other thing that it does is that it gives others out there the potential confidence, like, hey, look, no one's perfect. And also the ability to respond. We open up the door for response. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes the responses are not very nice or whatever. It gives the ability for others to respond ideally in a constructive and a productive way. So that's why I think being on camera is really important, especially when we're talking about technology of the nature of Arweave.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that 100%. As we were heading towards the end here, I just have one last question, and it's I as we're like at the end of the year, I'm just wondering like if there are things you are at a personal level excited about for like next year or the coming years. This could be something you'd wish to see like coming to life and all those type of things. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for just the raw relentlessness of Arweave that is a protocol. Um, uh, I I think it's just such a powerful protocol, and I see a real great opportunity for a lot of freshness. Um, I think that there is a lot of what I'll call latent connection to Arweave as a protocol. I think that many individuals are looking for a purpose in the crypto and blockchain space. And I think that Arweave can be that distillation, that kernel that many individuals are looking for, to align with a mission that goes well beyond any cycle and whatever else like we discussed, and goes to actually something internal that like one actually cares about, like to actually care about the thing and not be like just kind of do it just because, I don't know, maybe there's money or whatever, to actually fundamentally connect with it and to watch and to facilitate and be a catalyst as to the greatest extent possible on my end and Longview Labs to expand that connection for individuals that are looking for a mission and purpose in the crypto and blockchain space. That's probably the main one that I'm most enthused about for the coming year. And to reference my talk in Singapore with Arweave Day Asia, the other thing is that Arweave gets more interesting with time. Like it just gets more interesting. And I'm not just talking about like a piece of data or a data set that becomes more and more culturally and historically relevant and important. I'm also talking like the use cases of Arweave expand, right? I'm pointing to AO computer, decentralized supercomputer that integrates beautifully into Arweave and is able to do wild things because of the immutable and permanent data set that is Arweave, that powers the holographic state and all of these things on AO computer, right? And so for this coming year, to me, I think that there is like a trifecta. I think that there is this relentlessness of the protocol that is just the protocol. It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. I think that there's this distillation of like looking for purpose and mission, and actually something that like has direct utilitarian and civilization grade benefits. And I think that there is this confluence of tech that is AO computer that's all coming together. From AO core and the node infrastructure and the payments and all of the layers of devices, right? And all of these things coming together to continuously expand the opportunities and impact and initiatives that Arweave as a protocol enables. And I think it's important to say, hey, man, it's not a simple straight road. It has not been. I think it's widely known that there's been difficult times, and it's not an easy time. I think this is where individuals get clarity. I think many individuals will find that that clarity and start going towards, personally, obviously I have my own bias here. It's just like, I think that many individuals will find Arweave and be like, this actually makes sense. I get this. And it feels good. Like I want to be here and contribute. This is greater than me in the best of ways. So that's the trifecta that I see. Seeing a decentralized computer like AO computer really do its thing, become in the stride, while also these other two components really coming together to show that Arweave not only grows a data set, the use cases grow over time. And simply Arweave gets more interesting with time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Arweave has been built, and there are probably use cases that we haven't discovered yet, and that we'll discover down the line. As we're approaching the end here, do you have any last word? Any, could be in any direction.
I mean, really, that Arweave gets more interesting with time, and that, to your point, we don't even know where that goes, and that's part of the amazing aspect of Arweave. It's a substrate. It's bold. It works. And the data set of humanity and machines is growing ridiculously fast. So that seems like a good scenario to me. And a reliance on data is only increasing. It is literally only increasing. these things are really, really, really important. And I just think there's a long and important expansion of awareness for Arweave as all these things continue to come into the picture. So I'm enthused to see, fresh individuals coming into the ecosystem, fresh partnerships. We're seeing a lot of that already, right? And fresh use cases like AO Computer and more. I think that's really how I'm thinking about it. It's expansion. This is a time of expansion. It may not look like it in some areas, right? If you look at the fundamentals, it's a time of expansion. And I think that's where my mind is at.
Nice. Greg, again, thank you very much for giving us 1 hour of your day to talk about Arweave. And it's been a very, very interesting conversation. Learned a lot and some things I wasn't really thinking about in some way. And that's why it's always interesting to see people in the Arweave ecosystem share their insights and things they're thinking about and working on. And that's the entire purpose of the podcast. And yeah, thank you again for coming on the archive today.
Thank you so much, Murdy. I super appreciate the opportunity, and you're doing a great job. And yeah, we'll be in touch as we are.
Yeah, sure, 100%. And one thing we didn't talk about is the AO Dev bot. I'll link that in the description below. So check out the AO Dev bot and yeah, play around with that exciting technology.
So yeah, the AO DevBot is hosting an AO Holiday Jam. So it's the Holiday Jam for 2025, and we're going to be launching signups on December 11th. It'll be activated on December 18th, and it'll wrap up on January 2nd. And there's cash prizes, and we have custom assets, and you can just go to aodevbot.ai and sign up for the challenge.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much for mentioning that. I'll make sure I drop the link in the description so that people can just sign up and yeah, have a good time during the holidays playing around with the AO Dev bot.